FlatsClass YouTube fans, Captain CA here, and welcome back to the channel. Today, we're talking the top 5 inshore baits for February. Let's turn around here at the desk and get started. All right, let me preface this by saying something, because these videos that I do once a month, most popular inshore for that particular month, those baits will really work all year round. So don't think that, I'm skewing it toward just the month of February this time. They work year round, guys. This is just to give you some confidence, some insight, a direction, and a lot of you like that. You guys like it when I tell you, hey, give these baits a try. This is what's been working for me on the water every day. Hopefully I'm giving you kind of a helping hand on, or a piece of advice that will leverage some confidence with you, and you'll start catching fish on something. So here we go. Probably the number one thing for me when we get into this month, because generally speaking, this is one of the driest months of the year, especially here in Florida. So I like to pick baits that work great for Texas and the upper Gulf Coast and the Carolinas and the Georgia coast and coming down into Florida. But generally speaking, here in Florida, February is one of those months that a lot of things go on here because the weather's beautiful. February and, actually March. March and April, things start getting a little bit windier, but February is a really good month here with stable conditions most of the time. It's cool. It's not that cold, but it's cool. But the water is very clear. It's super clear. So the first bait I want to tell you about is actually not a bait. It's the fact that you need to start using longer leaders this time of year. It's almost a necessity. Now for me, I almost always tie on this time of year a 5-foot leader. Now whether you connect that with a modified Albright like I did here, or if you connect it with maybe a FG knot, something small, something secure, something easy to tie. But I typically tie that knot that's small, like the FG or the modified Albright, so it goes to these guides rather easily without creating a lot of line havoc, if you will, going through those guides or destroying the guides. And then when I get down to the last 18 inches, I will bled knot, okay? I'll just tie a little bled knot. I'll put a little heavier leader material on there if I'm anticipating catching some bigger fish. So if you're a spinning rod person this time of year, and you're not throwing casting gear where you have the opportunity to throw straight fluorocarbon line, or you might want to throw a copoly, like a premium monofilament line, which I do an awful lot. I just shot a show about that. I would recommend getting some quality 15-pound fluorocarbon, and it's kind of become a staple in my shop where that's what I do. I like to have a section of 15-pound fluorocarbon on there all through the winter and spring, and then add a piece of bite tippet. And I just do that because I feel as if that's the smartest thing to do. It's given me a longer buffer zone for my clients. I can use 10-pound braid. They can make long casts. This happens to be a 7.5-foot rod. So now they're able to pump out, a 3/8 to ½ ounce lure 125 feet out there, but they've got that buffer zone that will allow them to power fish, sight fish, slow fish, and they don't have to worry about spooking fish. So I'm going to tell you this, try out the Diamond Illusion Fluoro. I think you won't be disappointed in their leader quality. Really good stuff. Now, let's move on to lure number 2. I promise, it's a lure. Okay, lure number 2 is one that was dropped at ICAST this past year, and it's the Motron. This is the Motron, what we call the 3.3. It's just a body, so you can rig it a number of ways, whether you want to Texas rig it, Texas eye rig it. For me, these baits are such a realistic looking tiny mullet because of that wedge swimming tail. Look at that swimming tail. Or you can mimic, and maybe in your area there's killifish or mud minnows, but it does a really good job. It's got a tough, it's even tougher, if you can believe, than most of the paddle tail offerings at Z-Man, just because of its build, its design, its unique profile. Now, with a lot of different paddle tails, they can be hopped and moved different ways, and I've got one here that I've got to show you. But this one is a true swimming swim bait, and it's not really a paddle tail. I got to call this a swim bait. But the 3.3 inch size is perfect for this time of year. You're fishing these cold days, ice blue skies, higher barometers. Fish want to be tighter to the bottom. They're tougher to catch. And when you pick natural colors, like this one happens to be Houdini, when you pick those colors that kind of blend into the bottom, these Motrons can be really deadly. I'll give you a perfect example. I was fishing with my son doing episode 5 for this season, and I hired a guide to be running the camera boat, and he's a friend too, Captain Mark Dillingham out of Port Richey. And Mark told me, he goes, "Hey, see, fishing here is not what you think it is right now. It's been really cold and it's going to be tough. You're probably going to have to throw small baits tight to the bottom to get an eat." Well, I didn't want to do that. I'm fishing with Cam, haven't fished with Cam in years. So on the show, that is. So I bring hard baits like Catch 2000s and a couple of my Paul Browns and even a few slow, I wanted to slow walk some topwaters and get some really exciting stuff for this particular episode. I worked my ass off trying to catch fish, and I caught like 2. My son, on the other hand, listened to the guide, never guide the guide. He listened to Mark and started throwing a 4-inch scented jerk shad, and he worked it slow and left it on the bottom for like a few seconds. Worked it slow and left it on the bottom for a few seconds. And I'll be damned if he didn't outfish me until I tied this on. Then the old man got even. Now I'm going to be honest with you. My favorite way to fish this, I'll bring my rod up here again, is on these standard jig heads. These are the Trout Eye jig heads. This is a 3/16. That's my favorite way to fish it, just because it's a weight forward design where you can really kick it out there. And when I'm rolling it with my rod tip at about 10 or 11 o'clock, just reeling it, making sure I can feel bottom, I have enough deflection in the tip so that when something eats it, all I got to do is rear back and we're on. So bait number 2, or technique number 2, would definitely be consider the Motron quite a bit, the 3.3 Motron this month. Now bait number 3 is going to be this one. This is it's still cold, remember. So we talk about that. So that Ned stuff is still, you can still fish Ned baits. I'm going to be fishing Ned baits this month. But this is kind of like the hybrid thing that goes on with me. I still want to kind of power finesse fish, and I kind of still want to Ned fish, and I'm like torn in February, because we'll get a little bit longer breaks sometimes between cold fronts. They won't be so stacked up on top of each other, and you get a little warm up. Like this weekend, we're gonna have a good warm up. But we have those pretty Florida skies, and a lot of my favorite zones from Pasco all the way to Levy County will have these big sandy areas. This time of year, the grass isn't as full as it is when we see it in the spring and summer. So you can work these spots and you can see fish out there. You cannot throw at them anymore. I can remember 15 years ago, you'd be able to put a jig like this right on top of one and he'd just smoke it right there in front of you. That doesn't happen that much anymore. Now you have to lead the fish with these longer leaders I'm talking about. You have to lead them maybe 30 feet. and then let something settle on the bottom and then start swimming it, and then as they move, just drop it. One of the best baits that has action when there's no action is Heath Hippel's Bugs Fishing Company. This is his Permid Bug. It was designed to catch permit and bonefish. I love the shape of that head on this bait. It casts very well, and it is one of the best crab imitations that you can literally buy. You might say, gosh, I just don't have a lot of faith in throwing hair jigs. I'm telling you, well, this is something I teach in FlatsClass University. If you don't know about FlatsClass University, you need to check it out. And it's about confidence. If your only confidence is in one or two baits, especially if they're power baits like paddle tails, if you would just set that sucker down for about the next 10 or 15 fishing trips and start fishing some other baits and build some confidence in them, you would become a much better inshore angler, I promise you. But this little Permid Bug is one of the best. It's got rabbit, it's got rubber legs, and it looks just like a crab. There's a little rattle inside of it. One of my favorite sight fishing baits would have to be the Permid Bug. That's number 3. All right, let's talk about 4 and 5 real quick. Here's number 4. The Paul Brown Fat Boy. This is the floater series. You see that little red gill? That denotes whether it is the original Fat Boy or it is the floating Fat Boy. The floating Fat Boy is about 1/8 of an ounce lighter. So where the Fat Boy will weigh what I call a fat 3/4, it's somewhere around 3/4, 7/8. This one would be barely 3/4 or just under. So you're gonna need, the perfect rod for me, honestly, is a 7'3", medium heavy, moderate action rod. And the reason for that is I need the medium heavy, and now this is a casting rod, so I can drive it out there and make a long cast. And trust me when I tell you, this is no exaggeration. I can cast this well over 130, 140 feet every time. But then when it hits the water, I typically want to have it tip soft enough where I can pulse this bait back and forth, and then let it pause. And then when a trout engulfs the bait, loads up the rod, I can come back and it doesn't react too fast where I pull it away from him. He gets it, I lean into him, rod heels over deeper in the blank, and then we play this game of stretch all the way back to the boat. And they don't have a big hole in their mouth, and it's easy for me to land bigger trout. That is why the Fat Boy is one of my favorites this time of year. Now, I feel like this bait works best when that water temperature drops and gets to a certain point, and then you get a day or two where it starts to creep back up. That's when this starts becoming very, very effective. It's super effective in 1.5 to 3 feet of water. If you want to know where the Fat Boy, the OG for this bait that's a little heavier, works best, I feel that that works better in 2.5 to 3.5 feet of water. So when you're fishing those spots that have deeper little holes, and then there's like a little wad of grass that comes close to the surface than another one, this is the one you want. The Fat Boy floater. That's number 4. Now we're going to talk about the last bait for the month, and that's going to be this one. And bait number 5 would be this one. This is the Z-Man Trout Trick, Swimmin' Trout Trick. This is gratuitously my own flavor. This is the dude that I came out with a while back. It's very shrimpy looking color. I'll pull one out of the packaging here. I picked this one because, ironically, this is the exact bait that came out at FlatsClass University for the month of February. My fishing college is basically one of those where you receive a bait every month, and then we basically teach you how to fish it. So this was the bait of the month. It's got an exaggerated boot tail, very slender body design. It's ribbed so that it will hold more scent. That cupping tail gives it crazy action even when you're reeling it very slow across the bottom. Then when you stop it, if it's on a jig head, the tail kind of lifts up and just kind of swings there in the water because all this elastic is buoyant. You can Texas rig this. You can rig it on a jig head like I showed you, the Motron 3.3. It's a fantastic bait. It's one that you get a lot of confidence in very fast because you can hop it so it jumps like a shrimp off the bottom. You can swim it so it looks just like a slender minnow. I've got lots of videos about this on FlatsClass YouTube. I think we just did one not too long ago on power finesse baits, and the swim and trout trick really was the star of that. But now that I've launched it on the class on FlatsClass University, I even tell everyone, I was like, let's just say, you know, you feel like they're not hitting reaction baits. You can clip the tail off and then put this on a mushroom head. I don't have one sitting here. And then you can just fish it like a Ned because it will stand straight up. So there's a lot of things that you can do with the swim and trout trick. It's a very, very versatile bait. February and March, this is going to be killer. But like I said, when you watch these videos from me, I'm giving you some direction for that particular time of year. Seasonality is considered and all that. But these baits can work all year round. Don't discount that for a second. Hey, if you enjoyed what we did here today and you're loving the channel, please give me that like and subscribe, hit the notification bell, comment, share it with your friends. I want all of you here. And any of this product that you saw here today, you can buy at sodiumusa.com. They are my tackle affiliate and partner on FlatsClass University. So if you don't know anything about FlatsClass University, that's another one you should go check out. Go to FlatsClassUniversity.com and you'll see more deep dive videos that go way deeper than my YouTube channel. All right, until tomorrow, Captain CA says, have a great weekend and keep them rods bent. Let's go.